I think just responding to what everybody's been saying earlier, the word wasn't synergy which kept coming back, but context was the one which kept coming back. And I think I've rewritten it. I wouldn't call it playing in the Dulwich archive anymore, but I'll be calling it contextualising the First Folio. But first of all, I am going to respond to Emma there about the snivelling child. I was sitting opposite her, and there's something rather wonderful about that. There's something rather wonderful about the snivelling child. Perhaps watching Emma and then becoming a theatre scholar, or me taking the snivelling girl and boy who then to look at Measure for Measure when I was doing a play with them, and then becoming Sally Hawkins and Chiwetel Ejiofor. They were already them, but the actors. Or a while ago, the young Giles Block, who I know saw the archive at the college. He is a student there, who then is clocked in this event. And also, I was just wondering about the child who last week, who did come in but sort of backed away when I'd been in the room with Patrick Tucker for about half an hour. And I sort of held my head in my hands and said, Patrick, I can't. Right, we've got to start this whole conversation again. And I just wondered what he, in the future, might think about cue scripts and that particular conversation. The great thing about our First Folio is that it isn't the most important thing in our collection. And having it in the collection contextualises the other documents, and the other documents contextualise the First Folio. And I know this because many people in the room have been to Dulwich College, to the archive, to look at the First Folio, but also the other theatre documents that we have there. Now, right. On his death in 1626, Alain's legacy to Dulwich College included costume lists, which you might be aware of, play manuscripts, plats, and a cue script, which we're going to have a look at in later for Orlando Furioso, mainly from his time at the Rose Theatre and the Fortune Theatre. Now, Grace Alpolo, who's worked with us and from the University of Reading, her work includes, in fact, the digitisation, if I can get it up there. Oh, that's Richard Burbage and not Grace. But her work has included the digitisation of those documents, and we might talk about that a little later on. But she calls it the largest and most important single extant archive of material on the professional theatre and dramatic performance in the age of Shakespeare. Now, the really important thing is that she speculates that the papers represent what she calls a consciously created theatrical archive. So in 1600, perhaps before that, he was squirreling away papers with the intention of us looking at them at an event today. He would have been delighted that we're talking about the papers. Now, the archive, it holds a special place because it's not the only place of the collection that can boast so many documents that echo those. The importance is that we hold documents that echo those that Hemmings and Condell are likely to have used in the collation of the First Folio, or at least some of the plays in there. To have those documents sitting alongside a First Folio, albeit a partial copy, in one vault is extraordinary. You get a real sense of story when you look at all those documents together. Hemmings and Condell having a real sense of mission while working on the First Folio with the syndicate. Amongst the legal disputes, the politics, the questions of ownership, the complicated financial arrangements, and so on and so forth, their work must have been coloured and likely energised by the death of Richard Burbage and Richard Cowley while they were thinking about the project. This is a picture of Burbage that is now in Dulwich Picture Gallery and entered the ownership of the college with the First Folio itself. Now, the urge to complete the project while Hemmings and Condell were still fit must have been a huge driving force for them. They were, in fact, archiving the work of a company that they had been integral to. The folio was a homage to Burbage, Shakespeare, but also their own working lives. And like Alleyn, I think they were conscious of their legacy and indeed their shelf life. This is a picture of an extract from a page from Alleyn's diary. And on the 4th of June 1622, Alleyn writes, "I dined with Mr. Hemmings." When they both met, they were both 56, almost exact contemporaries, born a month apart, both notable actors, both property owners, and both at the heart of this theatrical explosion around the turn of the century. I think that apart from a myriad of other reasons that Father Folio project, for Hemmings there was a very good social reason and a personal reason for him to pursue it. And now, the archive itself came into the college through a further acquisition. Sorry, the folio came into the college later on. Alleyn's original bequest became a magnet for other theatrical documentation. Now, it came to us in 1686, we think, through the estate of the actor and bookseller William Cartwright the Younger. The younger Cartwright was in his 20s when Alleyn died, so he couldn't have acted with Alleyn, but we know that William Cartwright the Older knew Alleyn well, and there's a family connection. And it's almost certain that William Cartwright the Younger already knew of this archive at Dulwich, and therefore, on his death, the folio made its way to the college. As I said, the folio itself is a very fractured or partial copy. And it's really interesting, that question of marginalia and comparing the performance notes. That would be a really interesting job to compare them. So, for instance, I suspect, but I don't know, that we've already had a reference to Henry VI Part, Henry VI Part 2, but we've got here, Henry VI Part 1, sorry. "It thunders and enlightens terribly, and then riseth the spirit." And somebody has written at the side, Robin Hood. Now, that could really be a performance note. Robin Hood, of course, was sort of a well-known sort of spirit at the time. Perhaps he's a good person ever to speak truth unto power, but also he's a pretty easy spirit to costume, and we know that there were plays of Robin Hood knocking about at the time. So it'd be really interesting to look at those marginalia and see whether any of them corresponded. We're going now to another really interesting document, and this is the plat of the second part of the Seven Deadly Sins. A very familiar document to lots of people here. And it's just extraordinary to have it in the archive, as I say, alongside the First Folio, so that we can think about theatre practice. Now, for those of you who don't know, you can see various clues about this. The idea is, or the thought is, that it's sat backstage at the Rose Playhouse, or perhaps the Fortune Theatre Playhouse. It's the only one. There are 6 of those in existence, and it's the best kept example. And essentially, it's a plot summary, and it has a hole there which a peg went through, and perhaps a leather strap went down there to stop it blowing about in the wind. And you can see probably the top was done in goose quill because it's fatter, and it is a plot summary of what actually happened in the play. And it might be that Hemmings Condell and their syndicate looked at documents like this that were in the Globe collection and were able to draw conclusions from documents similar to this. Now, it was at the back of the theatre, so actors were buzzing about at the back of the theatre, but there were pretty low lighting conditions there. The Fortune Theatre contract, which is also in the archive at Dulwich College, stipulates for the Fortune Theatre the convenient windows and light glazed to the said tiring house. So there would have been a low light condition backstage at the Fortune Theatre, and by inference at then the Rose of the Globe. So you can see why the handwriting is neater, why there is stuff boxed out, and we've got several instructions here. There are alarms, obviously stage management instructions. Henry speaketh and liggett. Lechery passeth over the stage. And sloth passeth over, presumably slower than lechery. And we also have prop notes. So the ladies fly. After enter Sardanapalus with as many jewels, rubies and gold as they can carry. So, you know, a document like this would have been particularly valuable to people retrospectively trying to recreate or working on editing, if I can use that term, plays at a later point. Now, we're going to look at, and this is where we've already had a reference to Q scripts. And Patrick Tucker and Christina were in last week looking at the Q scripts. This is the only one in existence, the only English language one in existence. There are 30 in Spain, 30 in Germany and 30 in France. But this is the only English one, which is a bit of a conundrum. We'll talk about that in a moment. This is Edward Alleyn's script, Orlando Furioso, Robert Greene. And most of you will have seen this before or understand what's going on there. I think it was you, Greg, who described it as, did you see this when you were here? As a musical score. So that here, if you're playing the trumpet, you don't get the whole orchestral score. You get your part, and then you get a rest, and you have to count or you have to wait for your cue. And here we go. It says at the end of the line, "My Lord," and then you're in, and then you're in. So that's the way that worked. And at the bottom, it was glued onto the next page and glued on and I'm sure you know all this until you've got a complete roll. Now, in Midsummer Night's Dream, and I am going to refer to this, Peter Quince hands out the scores. What I'm quite interested in, what I've been talking about, is what actually happens to the scroll, because Peter Quince we don't see him collect them in at the end, but presumably he did. These are very valuable documents. You know, if you're running a production, you want to keep the scripts, particularly if a scrivener is writing it out. And what you don't want to do is, next time you come back to it, find that Oberon's part is missing, because that would be an absolute nightmare to copy it out again from presumably a prompt book, which they might have lost anyway. The actual collection and how that worked in a playhouse is really interesting, because there must have been thousands of the rolls. Where were they put? Were they kept in the tiring house? Who was looking after those? You would have to have a sort of theatre librarian almost to work out, who was going to get them next, where to store them, where I put them last time, and check that they were all there at the end of a production. So that's a really interesting point. And coupled with there only being one left, what are we to make of that? Well, perhaps they were all burned down in the Globe fire. Perhaps they were all burned down in the Fortune fire. Obviously, we'll never know. But that's a really interesting document. Again, when put aside a whole script in the First Folio, thinking about the practicalities of mounting plays in the early modern period. And finally, we come to a document which is on display at the Maritime Museum with the folio, and that brings us back to context in a moment. We've already seen a picture of David Garrick. Well, David Garrick had a sharp eye for manuscripts, and he came to the college and he swapped a whole pile of manuscripts for dull academic books, as they're later described. And those have ended up mainly in the British Library. We have got one left, which isn't a particularly brilliant piece of theatre. It's called The Telltale, and the interesting thing about there, again, is the details, and details that perhaps in a parallel universe, Hemmings and Condell might have looked at in their syndicate in compiling the First Folio. So again, we've got stage instructions, and they tend to happen on the left-hand side. And again, they tend to be boxed out, so we've got a flourish there. And then we come to the middle. They box out in the middle the group activities. Everybody comes on, everybody goes off. Somebody comes on with something, lots of people come on with that. And on the right-hand side, we get individual entrances and exits, done in this instance almost like a little finger post. So they exit off, off stage right. That is really an interesting document there. And those are three documents we can look at and really illuminate the First Folio when it's sitting beside them. Now, the context is really interesting. We're having a fantastic discussion just outside about the worth of an actual First Folio. What is the worth of the First Folio? What does it mean as a teacher there to digitize and say, go and look at the First Folio on a computer screen, and they go to their bedroom and they look at it and they go, well, yeah, okay. The nice thing about this project is, I think we're talking about, is because you're juxtaposing them, folios, you are asking them to play with them. You are asking them, students of whatever age, to discover stuff within them. That juxtaposition will set up vibrations just in the same way that the juxtaposition of the folio with those documents sets up different and new vibrations. And I really like the idea of taking our First Folio, like you said, in the garden with the Union Jack, and taking it out there, and it will change its meaning. And as I said, it changes its meaning for everybody who comes and looks at it. We know the people here who are lucky enough to have one. The most moving ones are the people who have spent their lives studying Shakespeare, who have spent their money coming to the RSC, who are stewarding at the Globe, who then will listen to lectures like this, and then they turn up and they see a First Folio. And I don't think it is a relic, and I don't think it's some great trophy object when you see somebody looking at it and regarding it as a sort of something that they have an immediate connection with. Now, taking our First Folio and putting it into Greenwich sets up different resonances. And those of you who know Royal Museums Greenwich, the Inigo Jones, the Queen's House is roughly of the same period. So they walk past that before they come to the display we've got in the Maritime Museum that Lucy and I have been working on. And I think putting it in a new context really changes this mercurial document and makes you think about it in very, very different ways. I'm going to hand over to Lucy now, just to complete the next part. Well, have I finished my? Oh, I was going to say about it fits in. Yeah, sorry, it fits in. We're all in charge. Lots of us are in charge of archives here, or working in archives here, and obviously this project falls within conveniently a strategy of access, of engagement. We already have I've mentioned it, the Henslow Allen digitisation project. Folios Compared will fit in with that, our aims. And then obviously finally, having the actual document in a different space with thousands of visitors and tourists visiting it is another part of that strategy. Here we go. Over to you, Lucy.